The blue and red lights flickered across the cabin's wooden walls, casting long, restless shadows that danced in the early morning dark. I stood on the porch, a mug of coffee in hand, watching two officers approach. A woman in her 50s hovered behind them, her arms crossed in smug satisfaction. Her beige pantsuit screamed middle management, and her perfectly styled bob bounced sharply with each emphatic motion she made toward my home. "That's him. Officers. The trespasser. I told you he broke in last night," she announced, her voice slicing through the quiet. "This property has been empty for months, and suddenly this man appears claiming ownership. I'm the HOA president of Whispering Pines Community, and I know every single homeowner here," she added. The lead officer, tall with gray streaks at his temples, approached me carefully. "Sir, we received a report of a burglary." "May I see some identification?" the officer asked. I reached into my wallet and handed him my driver's license, along with another card tucked just behind it. His partner swept a flashlight along the porch rail. They were searching for any sign of forced entry that, of course, wasn't there. The officer studied my license, then paused when he saw the second card. His eyes flicked up at me, widened slightly, and shifted to the woman. She was now tapping her foot with theatrical impatience. "Ma'am," the officer said evenly, "do you know who this man is?" Her smug grin faltered. "I don't care who he says he is. He's on HOA property without permission." The officer's tone changed immediately. "Ma'am, this is James Harrington, Senior Compliance Officer for the State Real Estate Commission." Her face drained of color in an instant. It had all started just 3 days earlier. My mother had called to tell me that Uncle Edward had passed away. Amid the grief came the unexpected news that he had left me his lake cabin in Whispering Pines Community. I had only visited once as a teenager. Nearly 20 years had passed, but the memory of quiet, pine-scented summers by the water had lingered. The estate attorney sent me the deed and keys, confirming everything was current, legal, and officially mine. After months of dealing with endless property disputes in the city, I decided to take a break. I wanted to spend a night at the cabin. It was supposed to be peaceful, a way to remember my uncle and escape bureaucratic chaos. The 3-hour drive through twisting mountain roads felt almost cleansing, and I arrived just as the sun slipped behind the trees. The cabin was exactly as I remembered: small, warm, and lined with knotty pine walls. A stone fireplace still carried the faint scent of old smoke. I unpacked some essentials, lit a fire, and sat down with a book and a glass of wine. By 10, I was asleep, lulled by the rhythmic chirping of crickets. Then came the pounding. It wasn't a polite knock, but an angry, relentless banging that dragged me from sleep around 7 a.m. Groggy and still half-dressed from the night before, I opened the door to find a woman glaring at me. She looked at me like I had committed a crime against her personally. Clipboard in hand, she demanded, "Who are you and what are you doing on this property?" Blinking the sleep from my eyes, I sighed. "James Harrington. This is my cabin," I continued. "I inherited it from my uncle. And you are?" she huffed. "Karen Whitmore, President of the Whispering Pines Community Homeowners Association. And I can assure you no one authorized this. This cabin has been empty since Edward Harrington passed. Any new resident requires HOA approval, transfer fees, and a background check." I rubbed my temples. "Listly own the property. I have the deed and the keys." "That's not how it works here, mister," she snapped, waving her clipboard like a weapon. "We have strict covenants. You can't just show up and claim a residence. Have you filled out your HOA application or paid the fee?" Leaning against the doorframe, I sighed. "Listen, Karen, I respect the rules, but I'm not a new resident. I'm the owner, and I'm just here for one night. I don't need approval to stay in my own home." Her face flushed crimson. "How dare you take that tone? I've been HOA president for 12 years, and I won't be disrespected by some outsider who thinks he can ignore our regulations." I replied evenly, "I'm not ignoring them. I'm exercising my rights. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need coffee. I began to close the door, but she jammed her foot in the way. This isn't over, she hissed. You'll hear from our attorney. If you're still here tonight, I'll have you arrested. She stormed down the gravel path, and I made a mental note to review the HOA bylaws later. I had dealt with plenty of power-hungry board members before, but Karen Whitmore seemed to be an entire case study on her own. The rest of the day passed quietly. I sorted through my uncle's things, took the kayak out for a while, and even met a few neighbors who offered condolences and a warm welcome. None mentioned any required HOA approvals. When I brought up my morning visitor, they all shared the same knowing look. You met Karen, said Dave from 2 cabins down, letting out a dry laugh. Yeah, she's thorough. He shook his head in lingering disbelief. She once tried to fine me for using the wrong shade of brown on my deck stain. I had to show her the approved color chart with the paint can in hand before she finally backed down. That evening, I grilled burgers outside. Watching the sunset spread orange and violet streaks across the lake, it was shaping up to be another calm night. That was until 2 pairs of headlights appeared at the end of my drive and the police cars rolled to a stop. Still holding my coffee mug from dinner, I stepped out to meet them, which brought us once again to this moment. Karen Whitmore's confident smirk evaporated as the officers read my name and official state title. The lead officer returned my ID, his tone firm but measured. Ma'am, could you explain exactly what crime you're reporting here? Karen blinked, taken aback. He's trespassing. This property requires HOA approval. But he owns the property, the officer said slowly, like explaining something to a stubborn child. You can't trespass on your own land. The HOA has rules, she shot back, her pitch rising with every word she spoke. He hasn't paid fees, filled out forms, or the second officer interrupted. Those are civil issues, ma'am, not criminal. You called 911 to report a burglary. That's a very serious accusation to make against someone. I decided to step in. Officers, I can show you the deed and the state paperwork if it will help clear this up. Everything is properly filed with the county. The property taxes are completely current and paid in full. That won't be necessary, Mr. Harrington, said the lead officer. We know who you are. My captain actually attended your seminar on property law compliance last spring. He then turned his attention back to Karen. Ma'am, you do realize that filing a false police report is a crime? Her mouth opened and closed like a fish gulping for air. I didn't file a false report. He's not supposed to be here without HOA authorization, but he's not committing a crime, the officer said evenly. He owns the home. HOA disputes aren't police matters unless there's real criminal activity. I watched as the absolute truth finally hit her in the face. Karen Whitmore, queen of HOA enforcement, had just reported a state compliance officer for burglary. Officers, I said calmly, thank you for coming. I would like to file a formal complaint about this entire situation. I was woken in my own home by a false report. This is the second time today Ms. Whitmore has harassed me. The officer nodded, pulling out a small notebook. We'll need statements from both of you for the official record. Mr. Harrington, would you like to press charges for the false report? Karen's face turned ghost white. You can't be serious. I'm the HOA president. I was protecting our community. I looked at her and asked dryly from its legal owners. The next hour passed with statements, signatures, and frantic phone calls. Karen rang her husband, someone she called their HOA attorney, and half the board. Each conversation grew more desperate as the reality set in. She realized just how badly she had overplayed her hand. When the officers finished, the lead one handed me his card. If you need anything for your complaint, let us know. We take false reports very seriously around here. He turned to Karen with a warning glare. Ma'am, I suggest you study property law before dialing 911 again. After the police left, Karen lingered in my driveway, looking significantly smaller than she had that morning. "You won't really file a complaint, will you?" she asked weakly. "I was just doing my job," I answered evenly. "Your job is to handle legitimate HOA matters, not harass residents or waste valuable police resources. I'll be reviewing your bylaws closely." "You should too." The next morning, I filed the formal complaint before heading back to the city. But that was only the beginning of the end for her reign over the neighborhood. At my office, I pulled the Whispering Pines community file. What I found was staggering. Years of homeowner complaints, excessive fines, and improperly noticed board meetings. Her little empire had left a trail of violations. Within a week, I scheduled a full audit of the community. State law required HOAs to maintain transparency, hold lawful elections, and respect basic property rights. Whispering Pines had failed on nearly every single front. The audit confirmed everything: missing financials, improper votes, and a deep culture of intimidation. The State Real Estate Commission issued a formal notice of violation and demanded immediate sweeping reforms. 3 weeks later came the emergency HOA meeting. Word had spread about Karen's false report and the state's heavy involvement. Residents who had suffered under her micromanagement for years finally spoke out against her. The vote to remove her from office was unanimous, except for her own vote, of course. I attended both as a homeowner and as the official overseeing compliance. Watching her clutch the gavel during the tally was surreal. Her 12-year reign ended not with authority, but with disbelief. "This is illegal," she shouted. "You can't do this. I've given my life to this community." Dave, the neighbor she once targeted, simply shook his head. "The vote's been counted, Karen," Dave said. "It's time to step down." Security had to escort her out as she ranted. The last image I have is her standing in the parking lot, clutching her clipboard like a lifeline. She was powerless without her title. Her false report earned her a $5,000 fine and 200 hours of community service. The HOA's insurer flatly refused to cover any of her mounting legal fees. Rumor had it she had taken a second mortgage just to pay her attorney. 6 months later, I was appointed to draft new statewide HOA regulations. The reforms established strict checks on board authority and protected owners. Unofficially dubbed the Harrington Protocols, they expanded protections for thousands. Ironically, Karen Whitmore's arrogant vendetta had sparked widespread, positive change. These days, when I visit the cabin, it is peaceful. I still see her walking her Pomeranian past my driveway. She doesn't make eye contact, doesn't wave, and certainly doesn't mention HOA business. Dave, now the new HOA president, runs things sensibly and without ego trips. Last week, I received a notice for the annual compliance review. As the state official assigned to oversee Whispering Pines community, I will be the one ensuring they follow every rule. The irony is certainly not lost on me. It's not lost on Karen either, who I am told turns pale whenever my name comes up. I sleep soundly in that cabin now. I know the woman who once called the cops on me for being in my own home lives in quiet dread of my return. The $5,000 fine might have stung her wallet, but the look on her face every time she remembers that I am the one auditing her, that is absolutely priceless.